spring and then river of living waters. Very exciting, very profound message on the spring that bubbles up from the throne and waters. It's this spring which is the river of life, which existed from the very beginning in Genesis 2 and the end in Revelation 22. Because there was a river, a spring that sprung up in Eden that broke into 4 parts. And in Revelation 22, we see a pure river of living waters. Of course, the Garden of Eden, the paradise, had the tree of life, and we see the tree of life in Revelation 22 in New Jerusalem. Now, in the redemptive process from the Garden of Eden, in the very beginning of the Bible, chapter 2, we get the whole redemptive process all the way to get us to New Jerusalem. In between them is the Ezekiel Temple. That's obviously why we're doing this series. Well, several reasons we're doing this series, but first of which is to prove that the Ezekiel Temple will be built. It's a simple statement, yes, but it is one that's caused great confusion. So, as we start with the Ezekiel Temple, we'll look at it in the book of Revelation. So we'll actually see that the temple it's referring to in the book of Revelation, there's the temple in heaven, but the operation of the temple of the heaven, the pattern of which is the Ezekiel Temple. And for example, we have discussed how the stations, how the altar, the golden table, the censer, the menorah, the Ark of the Covenant, and here the brazen laver or the molten sea, all relate to stations and positions of things in the tabernacle of Moses and in the first temple. They're all in the Ezekiel Temple, including the fountain spring of living water. It replaces the molten sea. It replaces the brazen laver. It brings in the temple model, we have everything on display for you here, where we see the altar, the fountains of living waters, the menorah, the censer, the footstool to the throne, which was the Ark of the Covenant, and the table, all fulfilling their redemptive roles that existed in the tabernacle and temple in the Ezekiel Temple. Brings us back to Genesis. It brings us forward into what will happen in New Jerusalem. So let's take a look at it here, Revelation 7. These are they which are before the throne of God and serve him in his temple. So this is Revelation 7 in verse 15, and clearly we see that the Lamb is in the temple, and this is not New Jerusalem, because in New Jerusalem there is no temple, because New Jerusalem is the throne of God and of the Lamb. So they are before the throne of God in the temple. So his throne is in the temple. And then it says, the Lamb which is in the middle of the throne will lead them to the living fountain or spring of waters. Okay, the Lamb will lead them, the Lamb in the throne that we've shown you in the previous videos, the throne that's in the Ezekiel Temple, he'll lead to the living fountains or springs of water. Okay, now what is going on here? As we mentioned, this is part of the redemptive process of restoration from the Garden of Eden all the way to New Jerusalem. Okay, and we'll see that in the Ezekiel model, there's also trees as the trees of life, okay? Multiple trees, not just one, bearing all manner of fruits. Okay, so there we could see clearly the throne, the temple, and the spring that comes up, right? And Revelation 22:1, and he showed me a pure river of water, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. Okay, so obviously the water and river proceeds from the throne in Revelation 22. And that's the same thing we see in Revelation 7. And the same thing happened in Genesis 2:6. There was a spring that ascended and watered the earth, or Eden. And the tree of life was there. Okay? And the river went out of Eden to water the garden, the paradise. Okay? So there we see that clearly this river is coming from the throne. It is a fountain that comes up. It does turn into a river, as we'll see once we go take this information and refer it back to Ezekiel chapter 47. So here we get the fountain of waters, all right. And this also, let's look at once again the reference to the Ezekiel temple and the admonition in Revelation 21. All right. He that sat upon the throne said, "Behold, I make all things new." Okay, once again, the throne. Verse 6, "I will give unto him that is athirst the fountains of the water of life freely." Okay, the fountains of water of life freely. So once again, the admonition from the throne. All right, "I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to him that is athirst the fountain of water freely. To him that overcomes shall inherit all things. I will be his God. He shall be my son." Okay? So again, we continually see that it was a throne that Yahweh had in Eden. And from it proceeded this spring. And this is the same thing we see in the Ezekiel temple. Okay? Now, as we go, let's go to Ezekiel 47. Actually, let's look at some other prophetic verses that also prove that in the millennium, or in the end of days, the millennium time period, there is going to be a spring that comes out of the temple. Let's go Zechariah chapter 13, verse 1. "In that day shall be a fountain opened to the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and uncleanness." Zechariah 14:4. "His feet will stand upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go forth from Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of the nations which come to Jerusalem will keep the Feast of Tabernacles." That's obviously the millennium. Okay? So we also have another one in Joel chapter 3. And verse 16, so let's turn to it. Joel 3:18, "And it shall come pass in that day that the mountain shall drop new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters. A fountain shall come forth of the house of the Lord." Okay, this is speaking of the Ezekiel temple, of course. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 47. Basically, Ezekiel 47, verses 1 through 12, is going to cover the fountain of living waters that we just saw, because it's in the temple. And verse 1, "And he brought me forth again into the door of the house, okay, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward for the forefront of the house, and stood toward the east, and the waters came down from under the right side of the house at the south of the altar." Okay, so here we're getting the living waters coming out of the temple, proceeding out of the house, and it's again in the house where the throne is. Okay, so again, the throne being the source of the living waters, like we saw in New Jerusalem. "And he brought me by the way of the north gate, and led me through the way of the utter gate that looks towards the east, and behold, there ran out waters on the right side. Then the man that had a line in his hand went forth eastward, and he measured 1,000 cubits. And he brought me through the waters, and the waters were to the ankles." Now, if you're wondering what we were illustrating here from the intro of the video, well, it's going to be verses 3, 4, and 5. So again, the angel had a measuring line in his hand to measure 1,000 cubits, 2,000 feet, a little more than 2,000 feet, and he brought me through the waters, and they were at his ankles. So this is the level of the water as they proceed from the temple. It's at this level of the ankle. Then he measured 1,000, he brought me forth through the waters, and the waters were to the knees. Okay, so now we get the next level of the waters increasing, and now it's at the height of the knees. And again, he measured, 1,000 cubits. We assume it's cubits. It says 1,000, and he brought me through the waters to the loins, or to the waist. Okay, so these waters are issuing from the temple. They're heading eastward from Jerusalem towards the east. All right, so now we have one more, and afterward he measured 1,000, and it was a river. So we went from the ankle to the knees to the waist, okay? And then we get another 1,000 cubits, and it begins to go over the head so that it is a river that I could not pass over, for the waters were risen, the waters to swim in, a river that could not be passed over, okay? There's a full river of flowing water. This is the river of life proceeding from the temple. And again, as the river goes forth and there's many trees, okay, we begin to see that there's healing, just like we see in Revelation 22. There's healing of the nations. The tree of life was for the healing of the nations, okay, and that's what we see here. It shall come to pass that everything that lives, which moves, wheresoever the rivers shall come, shall live, okay. So this is a restoration of Eden coming from this river from the throne. There shall be a very great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither. They shall be healed, and everything shall live wheresoever the river comes. Okay? So we begin to see, as we explained before, En-Gedi, it gives us the precise location. Here at the En-Gedi, guys, the prophecy says that the river will flow from the temple to En-Gedi. What you see behind me here is En-Gedi and to the Salt Sea, or the Dead Sea. And that's what it says in Ezekiel 47 verse 10. It says there will be great fishers, there will be great fish. The river will be like the river of life, and bearing all manner of fruit trees and everything along the way. And so here behind me again, this is En-Gedi, and I don't know if this is the other side. Okay, let me reverse it. Here's another good view of the river. And the other way here, you see the river flowing from the mountains, going down. What it says is the river will flow, it will increase till there. And verse 12, and the river on the bank thereof, on this side and on that side, shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade. So this seems to indicate evergreens. So the trees will change their cycle, where the leaves won't fall off. Neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to its months, because their waters issued out of the sanctuary. And the fruit thereof shall be meat, and shall the leaf thereof be medicine, or healing. Okay? So this is amazing, because all of this, of what it's saying, is clearly a pattern of what we see in Revelation 22. That he showed me forth a pure river of water, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, on either side of the river, was the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Okay? So that's what's happening here in Ezekiel. Once we get this Ezekiel temple, Christ is reigning from his throne in the temple, we begin to see a phase, a high phase. The next phase after this, of course, is New Jerusalem, where we're getting a restoration of the Garden Eden from this spring that proceeds from the throne. Okay? So it's the waters issuing forth from the sanctuary. Okay? They shall be food, and the leaf shall be for medicine. All right, so this is amazing. That's very, very clear. It could be very, very easily understood that this is going to happen. The Ezekiel temple will happen, and there will be a spring. Now, the question arises, well, where exactly is there a spring? If we know where the spring is, we know where the temple is. Well, the Gihon spring, of course, is the source of water that was in the first temple. It wasn't necessarily under the temple building, but it was in close proximity to where its water source provided the temple with water, which exists to this day, amazingly. Okay, here we are at the Gihon Spring. This is an area that's dug down, cut out, and we have the ancient foundations. You see where those people are looking? Down below is the ancient foundations. Some believe to be those Jebusite, okay? But it's down here that the Gihon Spring will begin. And the significance of this place and site is it's somewhere around here. Solomon was anointed king. He was anointed king at the Gihon Spring. And we know Christ was anointed king in the celebration of Revelation 14 in the pattern of Solomon, okay, when there's the sound of many waters in Revelation. The Canaanite pool, okay, and again, to cause Solomon, my son, to ride upon the mule, to bring him down to Gihon and Zadok the priest. So there was a pool carved into the rock 3,800 years ago. So, is this a situation where the temple will be built exactly over the Gihon Spring? It's a little bit hard to say that because the Gihon Spring is down the slope a little bit and the Ezekiel temple is enormous. So, we're not sure. Most likely there's going to be a new spring that's going to come forth out of Jerusalem and actually come forth once the temple is ready for it. Okay, so that's very exciting. Of course, I went looking for springs to see if I could find anything, but this is amazing. There's so much prophecy about this. It's hard to keep track of it all, but there's a few things we want to mention. I want to talk about Song of Solomon, because the Song of Solomon, we do have we do have verses about the Garden of Eden, all right, the fruits, and chapter 4, a garden, or paradisos in the Greek, enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed, the plants of an orchard or paradise are pomegranates, pleasant fruits, okay. Verse 15, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters and streams from Lebanon. Okay, so that is what is are some of the verses, not even all of them, but some of the verses that speak of the fountains of living waters that proceed out from the temple in the millennium. Okay, so this is very exciting. Again, as we've gone for the previous videos, we have discussed the stations of the Moses Tabernacle. We've discussed the elements and stations in the first temple. And now we have covered many of them in the Ezekiel temple. We've covered the altar, the table, the footstool or Ark of the Covenant, the incense, the altar, of course, and then this here is replacing the molten sea and brazen laver, and this is the fountains of living waters. So very, very amazing, very, very exciting, very important prophecy, guys. Very, very significant. So we're very excited to share this with you, and we just conclude and say, the voice came from the throne, saying, "Praise our God, all you his servants that fear his name, both small and great." Spring up a well, spring up a well. Spring up a well, let the waters flow. The fountain of our God, come forth. Come forth, living waters. Come forth, living waters. Spring up, oh well. Let the staff of the elders break forth upon the spring of the King, and the fountain we will sing.